Welcome to part 3 of the bathroom remodel. You'll see how the floor is done. You'll see how there's definitely some joint compound up on the walls. You'll see that all of the backer board is in, and you'll see that the bench is in. You'll see that the shower pan is in. And so throughout the course of this video, I'll show you how I did it. We've arrived at the Home Depot to pick up the shower pan. The question is, will the shower door and the shower pan fit? And that is how it's done. The moment of truth. We're good. Additional tools you may want: a bucket of water, a bucket for mixing stuff. We're going to want a flexible sealant gun or caulk gun. We're going to want a trowel, a float. We're going to want a sponge, a hole saw set, oscillating saw. We're going to want a framing square, mud pan, hawk, some drywall stuff like drywall knives, an orbital sander. So you're going to need some cement board screws. I'm probably going to get the 5-pound one. You're probably going to want some cement board tape here, and this stuff is self-adhesive, which is great. You're going to want some joint compound. They also have a small 1-gallon pail. You're going to want some drywall tape as well. This stuff is self-adhesive, mold-resistant drywall joint tape. I'm going to go with Sturdy Flex Thinset mortar. I also need some floor mud mortar. You're going to want some silicone kitchen and bath. I'm going to go with this one, Red Devil. You may want a caulk finishing set. There's a couple different versions. We're going with DensShield tile backer. It has built-in waterproofing and a vapor barrier. And so we're going to use the 1/2 inch on the walls and 1/4 inch on the floors. Let's cut a piece of plywood for the back of this. We got to check to make sure all of these walls are vertically plumb, or at least pretty good. That way, when we go to put the tile backer on, we're not messing up here. So I have to fur out the walls right here for the shower pan. And so what I'm going to do is put a horizontal furring strip right up at the top. So that way when I put the ceiling in, it will help support it. These cuts don't even require a saw. Check this out. All right, good to go. Just kidding. All right, let's install this furring strip up here. I'm going to leave about a 1/2 inch from the ceiling so that I can fit up the DensShield up above it. I'm going to cut a piece of plywood for here so that I can come in with my new ceiling board and attach it nicely to the old ceiling drywall. So I'm going with DensShield product for the tile backer. You can also paint over this as well, and also use it on the floors and walls. On the walls, they recommend 1/2 inch. On the floors, I'm going with a 1/4 inch. So for this stuff, it says it's mold and moisture resistant, and it's got a built-in moisture barrier, and it also has a lifetime limited warranty, and we're going to install it according to their instructions so that we can keep that warranty. So on the front, you'll see this gray stuff. That's the waterproofing, so that's the side that you want to be facing towards the wetness. We're going to tie in to this plastic barrier but we don't need to continue to run this because it's built right into the back. Okay, so it already has waterproofing on it and the vapor barrier. All right, we need a piece of DensShield to be 33 5/8 by 27 3/4. We're going to sandwich this in the middle. So I got my tile backer board screws and I got my drywall screws. I'm going to put a little board here on the top of the wall so that I can suck up the ceiling. Let's cut out the hole for the light. I'm going to cut a strip for the bottom of the niche and pretty much fill in the niche right now. This is the self-adhesive mesh tape. The taping and the caulking of the shower cubby is done. The mesh tape will help all of the corners bond together nicely, and this whole cubby will behave as one bonded unit when we have that Thinset mortar growing its crystals. The other thing to mention is to try to avoid smearing the caulk all over the surface of the backer board. It may interfere with the bond strength. As the Thinset mortar grows its crystals, it might not grow as effectively into this flexible caulk material, and so I just scratched it off at a couple points. I should have been a little bit neater with that, but when it comes to the walls where you're holding up the tiles vertically on the wall, I'm going to be a little bit more careful. I need to fur out this wall right here, so I'm going to cut 3 different vertical strips going all the way up. The shower is going to be 32 inches from the back wall. This panel is 32 inches. That's perfect. We're going to be putting screws in about 6 inches apart and not countersinking. That's important. We have to run some caulk here on that seam where the two pieces of DensShield meet. Since we're furring the wall out a little bit, we're going to move the plumbing forward a little as well. I'm going to use the old holes as a template. So this plumbing is moved out. Good to go. We need a board cut here to support this. You can see how this is really loose. So we got to cut one at 14 1/4. Now this is secured very, very well, and once I attach this to here, this is not going anywhere. Now we're going to take this off just to make it a little easier. There might be a little bit of water in the pipe, so I'll use a towel. We'll take the cover to the mixing valve off as well. So this next piece of DensShield, I need to cut a hole here. I also need to cut a hole for the mixing valve there. 10 inches down and 15 inches over, we're going to drill the hole for the shower head. Using a bigger hole saw now, we are going to drill the hole for the mixing valve, 43 3/8 inches down, 15 inches over. Don't forget to turn the plumbing off just to be safe if you're messing around with the mixing valve. I'm going to cut out some vertical furring strips here so that when I put the door in, I got something strong to anchor it to. Let's get this DensShield up. Alright, so we got all that installed. Now it's time to caulk. It's nice to use a framing square to check your corners for 90-degree angles. It'll make your job a lot easier towards the end. So before you put the backer board on, check for square, check for plumb, check for level. Any major imperfections in your wall need to be fixed. I'm going to install a little bit more blocking here for my backer board to secure to. It's time to do the back wall now with DensShield. Got to use this battery so we don't need to worry about running out. Pre-drilling sometimes helps. I'm going to cut this to be a little bit more flush. Alright, so now we're going to caulk all of the edges. And I'm also going to caulk the edge of the cubby to make sure that that is waterproofed. If there's an issue with one of the screw holes like this one, you just have to take just a little bit of silicone, put it on your finger, and just wipe that screw hole so that there's no problems now with that ever leaking. Let's put some fiberglass mesh tape on here. I need to install some structure here to attach the rest of this wall to fill the gap. It's finally here, and it looks pretty awesome. When we get this in there, I think it'll look great. I'm going to install a shower bench in the corner here. And in terms of the height off of the shower floor, they recommend that it's 17 to 19 inches off the floor, which makes perfect sense because if you look at a toilet, it's usually about 17 inches to the toilet seat. And so somewhere between 17 and 19 inches, that's a good height for that. And what we need to do is install a little bit of extra structure there just to make sure that when I drill in with this corner seat, it's going to be floating, that we have a little extra structure for some strength. We also want to mark where our drain is going to go exactly. So I'm going to measure out where I need this structure for the bench. Let's cut a 2x6 at 22 3/4. We need to drill the hole in the subfloor. The question is, how big should it be? Well, let's look at the bottom of this. As you can see, that's going to stick out. And so we really need to be able to have this kind of down into the subfloor a little bit because this is such a low profile shower pan. So let's see what we can do here. So this biggest one here will definitely be big enough. And this one to step down, that should be big enough, but I almost would rather be safe than sorry. So I think what we'll do is go with my biggest one, and this one is a 5-inch. All right, let's drill this hole. We want to make sure that these walls are 90 degrees to the floor, and so checking that, it's pretty much perfect. We can also check it this way too with the longer edge on the wall, and it's looking pretty good. And then we can check the corners as well. This is awesome right here. You check it the other way as well. Yeah, I couldn't ask for much better here. And so just check to make sure everything's square, plumb, level, everything's good. It's a lot easier to fix it now than when you put the tile on. Let's put some self-adhesive, moisture and mold resistant drywall mesh tape up. Let's use some joint compound and go over this mesh tape with a thin layer. Now remember that this is just a first coat and you should still pretty much see the tape afterwards. It's just to get a small layer of joint compound on the wall. We need to mix up some of this polymer modified Thinset mortar. It's pretty much just cement with sand and some polymer additives. Cement is the binding element in concrete and mortar. Concrete has gravel in it, whereas mortar just really uses sand. But it's just a dry powder. Let's see. We'll put some in our bucket. I don't want to mix too much. Just whatever you plan on using. You gotta kind of use it relatively quickly. Alright, and once you add the water, you don't really want to add more because it'll start to dry and crystallize, and you don't want to add more water after that. So let's just add water once. And so what you do is wait till that dust settles, and then you kind of see what we're working with there at the bottom. Here's what we got at the bottom, just a little bit. And we'll pour some water in there. Just, you can always add more Thinset if you put too much water in. And now you can take a trowel and just mix it up. So clearly, you need to add some more water. So we want it to pretty much be a peanut butter-like consistency. It pretty much falls right off the knife, but it sticks together nicely. Definitely don't want to add too much water. I think that's pretty good. Now you might also want to get one of those drills. Now, at this point, I pretty much like to use my drywall stuff for this. It's easy to deal with. You don't want to necessarily mix hard with it because it'll maybe break your knife, but it's not too bad. Clean that off. Then we'll go over some of our tape. We can always mix up more if we run out. So you can kind of see how it just falls off the knife. Perfect. Embed this into our tape that we got. Careful not to cut through the tape. All right, make sure there's no plastic on this right here. All right, now we need to apply some silicone, kitchen and bath, to this area right here. And now we take this piece and push it on there. and the silicone will ooze out. Okay, now we're going to go to the other side. Alright, so we are first going to put this on, followed by this guy. And then we're going to put this guy on. Tighten that really hard. The quick grip works pretty good for tightening this. Now I'm going to come on over here, and I'm just going to take a slightly damp sponge and just wipe off the excess. You can also use a dry finger. Let's dry fit the plumbing here with the shower pan in place, making sure everything lines up perfectly. So we'll put this back on. Let's mark the top here so we can kind of get an idea of where we need to cut. So this line gives me a good idea of where I need to cut. I'm going to cut it down a little further than this, but we got something to go off of now. Also, let's trace out exactly where this pan is because I have it in a good spot now. Alright, this should be perfect now. Let's take it off. And let's mark a little bit. Now let's get this stuff primed and glued. First thing you may want to do is mark this out so you don't get confused as you separate them and prime and glue them. Also, you want to take these straight pieces out and just cut the edge just a little bit. Sometimes if there's anything sticking up here, it could cause a potential problem. So one of the things they recommend is cutting a slight angle on the edge. If you're doing a lot of this, you might want to get the tool that just twists and takes a little bit of that off for you, but I'm just doing two, so not a big deal. So now we're going to use OD primer and cement. First you have to prime, and then they recommend adding the cement while the primer is still wet. Now you need to hold it together for about 30 seconds. I would turn the fan on and open a window to get rid of the fumes. All right, let's hook this plumbing up. Do not forget to take this out. I repeat, do not forget to take this out or you are going to be in major trouble later. I'm going to dry fit it one more time before we use the mortar to adhere the shower pan to the subfloor and before I screw this in. I just want to make sure everything's lined up. This is what it looks like. Notice how because we used that one fitting we have a little bit of flex on our side. So this should be good to go now. And you can always come back in with a drill saw and cut a little bit more off if you need to. Let's screw this in. So I'm going to back butter this shower pan. We need to have pretty much 100% coverage on the bottom here so that the Thinset mortar will support this shower pan. so we want to check it for level in two directions here. All right, that's perfectly level. That's perfectly level. The moment of truth. That's perfectly level. Let's check it in the back just to make sure. Ugh. Oh wow, perfect. Okay, I can't get much better than that. Now we gotta clean this up before it dries. Get some nice clean water and a sponge. We're just gonna sponge that excess off. The last part of the plumbing involves putting this on. I chose to use some of the 100% silicone kitchen and bath around here as well. After I tightened down on that rubber, you don't really have to, but I don't see how that would hurt anything. Just give you a little extra protection. And then the last step, once that silicone dries, I'm going to put this finishing cap on. We got to install some DensShield down here, and we're going to run it all the way down to the top edge of the shower pan, and it kind of just sits on that lip. I'm ready to go with my silicone. Let's put some more mesh tape up. Let's mix a little Thinset mortar and go over the mesh tape. Alright, now we're going to measure for cutting the 1/4 inch DensShield for the floor. There's really only two spots to work around. There's the toilet flange, and then there is the vent right there. You can see how the DensShield goes underneath the toilet flange all the way around. You can also see how it goes underneath the wall over here a little bit, and now I just need some pieces for the outside. We're going to have a problem with the trim here around the door, and so the tile is going to come up at least another 1/4 inch because you got the Thinset too. So what I'm going to do is take an oscillating saw and I'll mark it here for now, and I'll cut a little bit off at the bottom, and that way I can fit everything I need to under that. We'll do that on both sides. Let's mix up some Thinset and get this floor down. Now we're going to screw the floor down. All right, we're going to install this better bench. It's a floating bench that goes in the corner. So we're going to install this so that the top is somewhere between 17 and 19 inches above the shower pan. Let's put a mark approximately where we want it. Notice how this line falls right on our 2x6 blocking for some extra support. So now with the pre-drilling, I'm just going to lightly mark where I need to drill these holes while holding this on the line. You can also check it with a little level here, make sure that this is level. Now that I know exactly where to pre-drill, I'm going to actually go through and pre-drill all the way now. Now I'm going to screw it in with the 6 screws provided. They recommend using a hand screwdriver to tighten it. I like this one because it's able to extend out. Pretty awesome. Now we're going to inject silicone kitchen and bath into these screw holes to prevent leaking. Now we're going to screw these screws in nice and tight. Check for level one more time. We're good to go. We're going to tighten these screws down all the way. Alright, I cannot physically tighten these screws anymore. Now we're going to run just a little bit more silicone on along the top. Now we need to mix up some floor mud. They also call it dry pack or deck mud. It's pretty much just mortar and it's got cement and sand, just a different ratio. Usually you just put a little bit of water in it. And so we'll mix that for the bench. So now we're going to fill this with the dry pack. All right, now when you get towards the top and on the front, mix it a little bit more wet. Also, we're going to try to make the back a little higher to give it a little bit of a pre-slope towards the shower. You can use a bigger drywall knife to get it nice and flat, and then you can also take a drywall knife and just gently, as it dries, kind of scrape the excess off, making it perfect. Well, this wraps up part 3, the pre-tile phase of the project. The next video will be all about tile for the most part, and getting the tile up on the walls and on the floor. This stage of the project was pretty much preparation for that, and so we'll see you next time.